we have some cool bugs with dirty fingernails.
Dirty fingernails, that's right. So I took a lot of pictures of hummingbirds in Monteverde. I love just trying to set up the camera and see if you could capture the birds. Most of them are moving so quickly that it took a while to get the settings just right. And most of the time they were moving so fast you couldn't really capture them. Every once in a while you got one that actually stood still for a minute and you can get a nice picture.
Like this one.
Like this one, yeah. And of course while I was taking all these pictures, the rest of the family for half an hour was giving me dirty looks and scowls and groaning and whatnot.
And Emily's making funny faces and I'm looking at the trees.
And we also did a night hike, right, in Monteverde? And what kind of stuff do we see on the night hike?
Wolf spider and some...
Yeah, so this wolf spider is actually huge. It's pretty hard to capture the scale here, but it's a very fat, big spider.
I talk about this one. This is a tree frog, and it's just the cutest little thing with their little pads. He's way smaller than the wolf spider.
That was a tarantula. We poked at him until he came out of his hole, and then he sort of stood there like, should I be bug, or should I just go back to my hole?
Yeah, he kind of stood at the edge of his hole here until a bug would come by and then he would come out. So if we stirred the ground with a stick, he'd come out looking around and see what was going on. And of course the highlight still of Monteverde was Cat Stevens. We also had a rental car on this trip, which we didn't usually have. We usually just took the bus, so we wanted to explore the back roads a little bit. And so we did that, and we found a lot of challenging roads to hit. And it wasn't that the roads were impossible to drive on, it's just that if anything were to happen, we pretty much would have been screwed because there were no one else was coming down the roads to save us.
And you can see that I'm asleep.
You are sleeping in the back seat, yeah. Catherine was unfazed by the driving. We actually ended up going to a house at the end of this road, and the people there said we could park in their driveway, and actually charged us $5 for parking, if I recall. But they also gave us directions on a great hike through their plantation.
And don't touch these guys, because these guys are centipedes and they have little mites.
And that was the end of that hike that we took. The girls wanted to go horseback riding a lot, but we said no most of the time because we were a little scared. But at this place, the owner of this cabin said, "Oh, we got friends that have horses," and so we said, "Really, for a 5-6-year-old?" They said, "Oh yeah, we can definitely accommodate a 5-year-old." So off we went. It was a pretty rough, rocky trail. We descended down at least 1,000 feet, if not more, into a valley. And we saw some really cool birds on the way down. This is a mott-mott.
This is a toucan. Toucans are nice.
Who's that?
Catherine with her horse. That was really steep, and a bunch of horses actually slid down that section.
Yeah, I'd never actually slid on a horse before, but that was pretty exciting. However, was not that excited, were you, Jill?
No, I was not.
As you can see here, we were going over lots of little cliffs and whatnot, and it got pretty dicey. The horses would trip and stumble. They never actually fall, but it would be enough to make you nervous. And this is Jill's face when we finally got down to the river bottom, where she's basically saying, "I am not going to ride that horse back up to the top." But of course she did.
I would not get off my horse. So we
You
were
had-
having a little bit of disagreement.
You had a nice horse there, Emily. That was right. Emily had the nicest horse every time we went.
Saltarin.
Saltarin, that's right. You remember what that means?
Little jumper.
Little jumper.
Now we're back in Portugal, taking a little break from our rigorous kindergarten class. And here's some of the kids giving other presentations. This was one of our afternoon activities through the volunteer group, and we're making bamboo jewelry. Another picture of the town of Portugal.
And I used to try to get up and do runs in the morning if I could before we volunteered. And I got up around 5 o'clock and go for a run. And this is kind of what the light looked like, and it was really a nice time to be outside. We went on a little field trip to the University of Peace, where it was, I'd say, very peaceful. And this next slide actually shows, I believe, some dancing that we witnessed in one of the classes. Essentially, they were trying to practice for a big competition, and this was some of the dancing that they were practicing to do. This is Alex, or Alejandro. He was the driver of the bus that we took to school every day. He ended up being a good friend, and we had a lot of adventures with Alex. And one of the coolest trips we took was to Arenal volcano. It's an active volcano, and you can witness a lot of activity. It was nice because it wasn't so jungly. It was a little bit more pine forest and a little bit more alpine-ish. Right from the grounds of the hotel we stayed in, we saw things like curassows, the bird on the left, and more coatimundis.
That was like the coolest bug you would ever see. It made like this chirping noise like a frog, and it was fairly big. We couldn't find its name. We never found out what it was.
Yeah, this was on what we call the hike from hell, and it was like a 6 or 7 hour hike that we went on where it poured rain for half the time and it was all muddy, and we were all pretty grumpy trying to get to the destination.
This is a jumping pit viper.
Jumping pit viper, that's right. We saw a jumping pit viper on the way, which was kind of exciting.
Scary.
And this was the destination. This was the old caldera of the original volcano before it had moved. So this used to be where the lava spit out, and now it filled up with water and was a lake.
So we climbed up to the jumping pit viper, and then we scrambled down with our hands and our feet into this wonderful destination. But Catherine was the only one who was smiling at this point, so she's the only one in the picture.
She wasn't smiling for long though, because 3 hours later we made our way back to the starting point, and we were all exhausted and soaking wet and muddy and grumpy. But it was a great hike, right?
Sort of.
Did you do it again?
I don't know.